The conditions of Minnesota's highways, roads, and bridges is getting worse. The congestion and travel delays around Minnesota are getting worse. Highway safety in their state is getting worse. Public transit systems in the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area and other of the state's metropolitan areas are becoming more antiquated and inadequate. With an estimated 1 million more people living in Minnesota in 25 years, 800,000 more of them in this metropolitan area, more cars, buses, trucks will be using the same highways, roads, and bridges, increasing their deteriorations and adding still further travel delays. Conditions and congestions will keep getting worse. That's a guarantee. Conditions and congestions will keep getting worse unless and until we do something about it. There's one solution, one real solution to our predicament, and that's to invest more money in repairs, improvements, and modernizations, and the plan that I'll be setting forth today would accomplish that over the next decade. The rest, reordering priorities, greater efficiencies, and value captures, are slogans, not solutions. I think Minnesotans know that this is the situation we face, and I think they're ready to do something about it. No one likes to pay more taxes. No one likes to provide more revenues to the state, but this is for dedicated purposes, for better transportation for ourselves, for our children, our grandchildren. One legislator is quoted saying, well, the situation is urgent, but it's not urgent enough. Well, I don't know what not urgent enough means. When it takes longer to commute, when your young kids with driver's training or driver's licenses are less safe driving on the highways, when shoulders are falling off the roads, I don't know what has to become more urgent before people respond. Now, it takes some political courage to tackle this problem and to enact this program, and that's why transportation funding is very difficult to obtain, even when it's urgently needed. You know, what will be remembered in 2 years, next fall's campaigns will be, oh, somebody voted to raise taxes on gasoline or wholesale fee or license tabs renewals, and the projects won't yet be underway. So you got to have the courage and the sense of your responsibility to the future of the state to propose changes that may come to be harmful to you politically, but are absolutely essential to a better future for most of Minnesota.
Minnesota is at a crossroads. Do we invest in transportation now, or do we wait? And at that point, so suffer the inevitable costs of roads and bridges and a transit system that don't meet our needs now or in the future. And what we decide is going to shape our economic competitiveness for the next 20 years. Rebuilding and improving our transportation system is all about positioning ourselves for future economic success, because Minnesota's roads and bridges and transit systems are really the backbone of our economy. Transportation has traditionally been a bipartisan priority, and for good reason. Republicans, Democrats, rural, suburban, urban, everybody understands the shared benefit of transportation systems that work. So I think one of the questions before us today and before the legislature over the next months as we consider our proposal is, why should Minnesota businesses and the people who work for them support this proposal? Well, first, I would say it's because it is going to reduce congestion. There's a very interesting number that just captures this coming out of Texas A&M University. It says that businesses pay, I think it's $242 million more in costs because of congestion and additional freight costs because of congestion. So that's a very important thing. Second, our proposal is going to improve safety, and this is an important issue all across the state, but particularly in roads like Highway 10, Highway 14, Highway 23 in greater Minnesota. Third, our proposal is going to focus on corridors of commerce, which is really targeting transportation investments that are needed for economic growth. We have done this initiative since 2013, 27 projects. We need to continue that, and our proposal does that. And fourth, I would say that our proposal, it is prudent, it is pragmatic, it is balanced, and it delivers real results. It relies on a steady revenue stream, plus borrowing, plus efficiencies out of the Department of Transportation that are real. It addresses our needs for highway improvements on state highways, but also city and county highways. And it supports transit all across the state, both in greater Minnesota, where it is incredibly important, and also in the metro area. And I think businesses should support this because they know that transit is important to their workers.
Our MnDOT's work in the past 2 years actually confirms much of those findings. We find that we really need to invest as much as $1.5 billion per year on the state system in order to keep it up to standards. Our current revenue forecasts only allow for as much as $900 million, so there is a gap. We're going to see a degradation of the system unless we take action. One of the interesting metrics we find is the cost that these degrading roads have on individual motorists and citizens. There's as much car damage and truck damage that equals approximately $1.2 billion a year. That's $396 per motorist. Also, as the Lieutenant Governor alluded to, the cost of congestion, not just businesses, but to individual citizens, is as much as 34 hours a year locked in congestion. So without further or adequate funding, it affects our counties and our municipalities and townships as well. They are facing the same challenges in terms of lack of funding, lack of indexed funding, and they have to take that major responsibility to take care of those roadways and bridges. Often that puts more pressure and burden onto property taxes. We see this proposal as one that helps relieve some of that burden. But perhaps the most important and key point of the governor's proposal is that it is a long-term approach. Both the idea of a sales tax on gross receipts is a mechanism that helps have an additional tax on fuels go up or down with the cost of energy, which is a larger determinant of construction costs, fuels, asphalts, one of the costs that is part of our system. It is a dedicated fund, dedicated to transportation over a period of time. We found this is a way that we can plan and be able to program prudently the needed investments in a comprehensive way. These funding approaches not only address the problem over the next few years, but over many years, because many of these major projects take years to engineer, and as we know the funding is available, we're able to actually do the work in a more efficient, prudent, and cost-effective manner.
The proposal today before us is for an additional transit funding bill that will add $2.8 billion over 10 years across the 7-county metropolitan area. This investment is absolutely critical for our region to plan for future growth and to remain economically competitive. It is a bold proposal, and you may ask, what will the people of the region and the state of Minnesota get with this additional revenue? This proposal will accelerate a build-out of 20 new transitways, and a transitway includes light rail projects, highway busways, the arterial bus rapid transit routes that are critical for the mobility of our region. And it's important to note that 17 of these corridors are busways. Additionally, the proposal will add 27% to our base bus service over 10 years. Most importantly, we will finally have a fully developed system. That's why we need a stable, dedicated revenue source, and we need it now.
I think another number to look at is if all these proposals are enacted, the average cost to an average motorist is somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 per month, both the increase in registration fee and the sales tax on gross receipts and the fuel tax. That $15, that $180 a year, that is considerably less than the costs on front-end alignments and flat tires and broken rims. So I actually think the arithmetic is not as bold. It's really just a prudent, business plan toward what Minnesota needs. And I actually think there's even wilder world-class proposals. This is really a competitive proposal that we think is required to maintain and to reverse the trend of degradation and start that trend going the other direction.
The wholesale price of fuel is the starting point, and I'll go into the detail I think you're asking for. So there's a wholesale price of fuel. On that is the federal gas tax. The Minnesota gas tax is applied at the same point in time. So the distributors, the first distribution after a refinery is where this would be applied. So it would be 6.5% on top of that annual average wholesale price. And so what a consumer sees at the pump includes all of those taxes that had been applied and paid through the distributor.
So have you calculated the pass-through costs to consumers?
So we would anticipate the distributors like this, with this tax, with the gas tax, would pass this on to consumers. So we would expect that they would see it at the pump as well.
And how many pennies would that be?
16, about 6, with the floor, it's about 16.3 cents.
If people can't get to work, if they can't get their kids off to school and to activities, talented people are going to find somewhere to live where they can. If business entrepreneurs and business owners can't get their goods and products to markets without exorbitant delays and costs, they're going to move somewhere or expand somewhere where they can. And you look at what's going on around the country, and you look at the investments that other governors, including Republican governors, are making or proposing to make in increased revenues for highways. We've all come to the same realization. The federal government is not going to be the primary source of the increases that we need for transportation. It's unfortunate. It should be, but it's not. And given the cost of these projects, without additional revenues, and these are state generated but distributed, I think, very broadly, very generously by the Constitution to the counties, the cities, and the townships, we'll have transportation improvement projects going on all over Minnesota, putting over 100,000 more Minnesotans to work, and most importantly, laying the foundation for the future economic growth and social vitality of this state.